I had this friend in elementary school, and I associate him in my mind with four prominent interests. The first was for the comic books of Marvel, and that was a fascination I naturally shared. Um, the second was for judo, and he did his best to get me into it too. It was enough to get me to drop my school's karate classes and try out his dojo. But that was more of a social decision. The elements that judo emphasized didn't really appeal to me, like grabbing specific parts of a gi. Um, for the purposes of sport, felt less natural to me than the jabs and chops of karate. Um, but we had a good time on our weekends at the dojo anyway. Now the other two uh, interests he had, in my recollection, were computer technology, um, which he pursued to some sort of career, um, uh, and Dragon Ball. Um, there was some overlap, and that mainly manifested in my life through the downloading of emulators to my computer for the central purpose of playing old Dragon Ball Z fighting games from the Super Nintendo era. Um, and in recent times, I've reconnected uh, with the friend and the cartoon uh, in disparate instances. Um, and the reconnection with the cartoon um, did prompt me to take a look at some of the more recent video games in the franchise. And honestly, they didn't really do much for me. Like aesthetically, they're unimpeachable. Um, but the nominally fitting focus on the z-axis made the mechanics feel unfocused to me. Like my favorite fighting game franchise, uh, outside of Super Smash at least, would be Mortal Kombat. Um, for for a lot of reasons, but I mean that does make it very easy to drift into things like Street Fighter and like games of that sort. The two dimensional sort of format. Um, and the most of the modern Dragon Ball games veer away from that, and like I get it. Like it does feel, I mean, it does offer some uh, fairly close imitation of the ways in which a fight can play out in the cartoon. But it's just not really what I was looking for in a game. But this new one, it just got announced. Fighter Z. That seems to be a return to the old style, the classical style. Um, and yeah, I mean, and it looks good too. I mean, it actually seems to imitate the visual style of the anime even more, which is great in its own right. Listen, there are a lot of video games that appeal to me in various ways, but I'm rarely motivated enough to actually go out and play them. Um, but this one, I've got added to my list. I mean, I barely touched the last Dragon Ball game I bought, uh, which means that um, purchasing this new one uh, can only be a lesser waste.